Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to this edition of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. Super excited for this episode. Today, we have David Miyashiro, Superintendent in Cajon Valley in California. So, David, I want to turn it over to you. Can you give our listeners just a little bit of background on who you are, where you're from, and the district where you serve?
Well, first, I want to start by thanking you, Tom, for being our keynote address for this year's convocation and starting our year off well. Everyone's year's been interrupted. In Cajon Valley, we have 27 schools, about 18,000 kids, very diverse, 70 plus languages spoken. We have severe poverty in our community, but we also have a very high socioeconomic community as well. So, tale of two cities, but a cohesive community unified by the educators and the leaders in our region.
Yeah, David, it was such an honor to be with you all in that regard. And one thing that I left with, such a highlight of my summer, spending a day with your team, your community, your people, it just radiated hope. And, now more than really ever before, we need as a people, as a country, and honestly, as a world at this point, we need hope. There's so much chaos around us. You turn on the news, there's such uncertainty. So as a superintendent of an amazing school district with incredible people that we're struggling all across the board, and I don't just mean your district, but we all are. What is it as an educational leader that gives you hope right now?
It's interesting. So I like the phrase from John Wooden, be quick, but don't hurry. So when the pandemic happened and we had to shut down, we were quick to get food service going, quick to get online resources and our Chromebooks home to our kids, things that they're used to already. But we didn't hurry to put a new program in place, even though that's what the state directed us to do, don't disrupt learning. And so one of the stories I've heard is about paving college walkways. And they say, don't pave the pathways and tell people to walk there. See where people walk and then pave around there so that it's natural. Our teachers naturally reached out to their families. They naturally called their students to check in on their well-being. Our principals naturally called their teachers. And so the human connection that we've already built in our community continued immediately and actually amplified. And that gives me hope, because at the center of everything that we do is human connection and relationships. And I think that that's what our education system should be. And that's what we've been able to continue doing in Cajon Valley.
Yeah, and seeing that firsthand in Cajon Valley, the team, the people, you are all constantly putting people at this heart of the decision making, and especially during the center of the pandemic. So let's talk about some of the obstacles that we faced. As a superintendent, that you face daily obstacles literally throughout the school year, but obviously in the past few weeks, things have been amplified. New things have hit the fan that now we're trying to redirect or work our way through. Talk a little bit about some of the obstacles your team and your district and your community have been facing, and some of the ways that you're really working to problem solve some of those.
Yeah, when the school is the hub and everyone's coming to it for food and for education and for a lot of resources, it's fairly easy and convenient. But now that school is not the hub and the home is the hub, we found lots of challenges. So typically we serve about 14,000 meals a day through our free and reduced lunch program. When we started our meal service, we were only serving about 4,000 or 5,000 meals a day. And that's troubling, because that means about 9,000 kids were not receiving their meals, their breakfast and lunch. And we found that over the course of time, parents have opted out of our phone communication. So when we blasted out, a lot of people weren't receiving the messages. And we found that, oh, that's why. They don't even know that it's available to them. And so when our teachers started to get on the phone and call their parents one by one and make them aware of what's available, then the numbers started to increase. We're almost at 10,000 now. And so it's not where we want to be yet, but our goal is to serve as many meals as we were before. And we're finding the same with internet connectivity too, because when we put out surveys on who's connected, who's not, they're not responding because they're not receiving the message. And so it's really the teachers and our school offices and their superpowers to connect with our families, because the families will pick up the phone when it's their teacher. When their superintendent calls, maybe not. So it's really the teachers and people that interact with the kids on a daily basis that have been making the most impact.
Yeah, and talking about problem solving some of these pieces just yesterday, because I admire your work from afar and I watch the things that you do as just such leaders in the field and your team. Just yesterday I saw you all put out around childcare for first responders and emergency services. What does that look like? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so as an emergency response, our governor gave us discretionary funds to do three things. One was continue meal service, two is provide distance learning, and three is provide health childcare for our emergency workers. The last piece is complicated because there's also a statewide stay-home order and a lot of safety measures in place. So we're looking at designing something where we can have a 5-to-1, 6-to-1 ratio with social distancing and engaging activities. But in our own community, I've heard from parents where both parents are working at the hospital. A lot of our families have met each other through their work, so naturally they have similar careers. And for families that have both parents in healthcare, or one in healthcare and one in grocery, and one doing a variety of things in the community, they really need our support. And so it's, I think, the right thing to do to provide it in a safe way. And we're planning to roll that out on April 20th.
Now, David, I know you've always been such an advocate since the first day I met you, such an advocate for students that are at risk, for students, whether it's from a socioeconomic end, whether it's, language barriers, whether it's learning differences or learning needs, special education. You've been a complete advocate, really getting to the heart of equity. Now we have issues around equity and access and the connectivity side of things, the homework gap, equity and opportunities, and you've just been such an advocate for equity. So what are you doing as a superintendent? What is your team doing, your teachers doing to make sure that our most at-risk students traditionally, but now that that's been amplified, really remain front and center of our decision making?
I love that. And great question, Tom. So our free and reduced lunch program was designed for equity, around the idea that if kids are hungry and not healthy, they're not going to learn well. And that was the vision of Lyndon Baines Johnson when he introduced the Elementary and Secondary Education Act back 40, 50 years ago. But what we're learning now is that kids they don't feel safe, they don't feel connected, that aren't happy, they don't have self-esteem, they don't learn well either. And so our vision of happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment is how we see serving all kids and providing every family a path to financial freedom. That's the goal of our curriculum, our modern curriculum, and that's the vision of our community, not just student achievement at a fixed point in time, but in the long term, a path to financial freedom and happiness and well-being.
Yeah, and when we look at all these things, and you're obviously doing so many things, let's just face it, fear is real and it's running rampant out there. We log
Yeah.
into the news, we see something online, we see death tolls mounting. Fear is real. So my question for you is, how as an educational leader, especially superintendent, leading things in a community, how do you work to overcome fear in your own world? But then how do you also work to reassure your principals, your teachers, and so on to support that?
I've learned so much from you on the power of video and the power of your face and your voice online. And over the last several weeks, I've gone to video quite a bit to do all my messaging because a lot of people aren't going to read the letter that I send, and it doesn't communicate calm and hope. And so by your example, I'm doing videos almost daily now to talk about what we're doing, to relay a sense of calm and let people know we're okay, and also to check in on them. So it shows what I should be doing all the time, which you do all the time, and I'm learning from the master.
Well, I appreciate that shout, but that video is that personal connection, and it shows
Yeah.
that it's certainly a lot easier just to send a letter or put it out there, but to be able to connect on that level is important. So kudos for that, and even for your own growth and modeling that vulnerability. So you've talked about, and it's so obvious in all of your work, you are somebody that just takes care of your people. I saw it firsthand. We see it online. You see it in your videos. You love your people. So my question for you is this: as an educational leader, you are spending 24 hours a day taking care of other people. What is it that you do to take care of yourself? And what recommendations do you have for educators? We've got remote now, or distance learning, or it just looks different, across the country in different ways, where it'd be difficult sometimes to turn it off at night. Like what are the recommendations that you have for yourself, but also for others?
Yeah, it's interesting. So in the last several days, I've talked to most of our school principals And some of the principals are having trouble with young kids and trying to manage distance learning. But some of the principals who have a family structure where they can actually spend time at home and have some time for a morning routine are reestablishing health and wellness that they didn't have prior to the pandemic. And so the basic things of getting sleep, having a morning routine of exercise and eating well. I think all of us are eating a lot healthier now that we're cooking at home. It's almost a return to the things that we know are right. And so at home, my wife and I have balanced our schedules. She's a superintendent also. So she works first thing in the morning, I work in the afternoon and evening, and together we have some time to take our daughter out to ride her bike. But we're both exercising and sleeping well and eating well. And my hope is that all of the people in our district are finding balance in their lives to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think that balance is just so important, and knowing that it's okay to not be logged in and online and on some sort of Zoom meeting 24 hours a day, and making sure that we do prioritize our own family or our own children. And I know that struggle is real. We see educators that maybe you happen to have two working parents at home that also have kids at home that are trying to balance it all, and just
Yeah.
taking care of ourselves in this process is so vital. So next question for you. I got a couple more before I let you go. You are somebody, you just radiate pride in your people. And I feel like I've said that over and over here in this podcast. And you're just so proud of your people. And that's just a natural thing since the day I've met you. But we're in a different time right now, and we've been pushed out of our comfort zones and we're trying new things. So what is it as the superintendent that right now you are most proud of in your district?
It's just the amazing epic work. It's just our ed services team put together a robust set of playlists of modern curriculum, our world of work, our TED presentation literacy in a week's time by grade level to make sure that our teachers could spend most of their time connecting with kids and having these virtual chats rather than planning lessons, grading things. They've really focused on the right things. Our business services and facilities teams have reorganized the whole department to serve food and to provide childcare for our emergency workers. So our district, we have bus drivers, and we have after school assistants, people that you wouldn't think have a role right now, but we've created a way for every employee in our district to sign up to do what they would like to do. I'd like to work with students. I'd like to read with kindergarten students on a Chromebook from my home. I would like to help students with IEPs on their IEP goals one-on-one. And some will serve meals, some will, it's just amazing. Everyone's doing their part. There isn't one person sitting at home doing nothing. And it was really them that came out and said, what can I do to help? And it was our job to find a way to let them do that.
Yeah, it certainly speaks to the heart of your people, but as leadership, just to think differently and allowing their own people to leverage their own interests or their passions or their strengths that may not be in their typical job description is a great display of leadership, but it really speaks to your team and ultimately your community and your people. So one more question for you. Educators are all over the board in terms of whether it's fear, whether it's remote teaching, whether it's trying something new, maybe, working outside of their comfort zone, whether it's a superintendent or a kindergarten teacher or a support staff member that's working as really, really hard as well. What's one piece of advice you have for educators right now?
I learned this from our PTA presidents. During the first week of the shutdown, I had a virtual town hall with all of our PTA presidents. And I asked them, after we let them just share their circumstance, what should we be doing as an education system? How do you want us to respond? And resoundingly, they asked for flexibility. They asked for human connection and relationships to continue. And they asked for guidance. They said, we want our students to do well and be successful. We need guidance as parents as well. And so thinking about that should be the norm when we return to life as we know it, I think, too. Flexibility, human connection, and guidance and advisory. As a federal government and state government, they've waived requirements around grading, around seat time, around a lot of the restrictions that we've been clamoring against. And the worst thing we could do is to put them back in place when we open school again. The flexibility that we've been asking for is here, and let's fight our legislators to keep it.
Flexibility, human connection, and guidance. Masterful words, my friend. That's David Miyashiro, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. David, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom.